Happy Sunday, everyone. My name is Amara Mushtaq, and you are joining us on our online discussion with Elevate Youth Voices, which is a program of Women to Women Forum, a nonprofit. Today, I'm joined here with author Shezda Afrin to talk about her book, Sweets Down the Street, and to talk about children's media and South Asian representation and the importance of it. So I'm like really excited that Shezda is like, we're finally getting this on the calendar because this has been like forever since we've been like going back and forth trying to plan a date that worked for both of us. And I just like, as soon as I saw about your book, I really wanted to like, the instant thought was like, we need to talk about this because it's such an important topic. Why don't you just like take a few minutes and like maybe like tell like, the viewers a little bit about yourself and, just like maybe a little bit about the book.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you so much, Mara, for having me. I adore the platform. I've been looking at the initiatives you guys take, and it's amazing what you guys are doing, especially not only in the South Asian community, but for women as well. So thank you so much. A little bit about me. Hi, everyone. Happy Sunday. My name is Shezda Afrin, and as Mara has already introduced me as, I'm the author, quote unquote, of Sweets Down the Street. And yeah, I am a student by day and then a writer by night, if you were to say something like that, where I write a lot for a publication called Brown Girl Magazine. I work with amazing individuals in that community as well. I run a little side hustle called Mishtis as well. I'd love to talk about a little bit more about that in relation to my book. So yeah, I do healthcare by day and all this by night, and I take a lot of pride in my South Asian heritage, and so that I hope that reflects in the work I do in my day-to-day lifestyle. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, which is funny. Speaking of mishtis, actually, what during like Ramadan, you were like, you were posting about this sweatshirt that said like, "Is it Maghrib yet?" and had like the Ruafza thing. I was just like, oh my god, I need to get this because it's like I love when I see like imagery or icons of like our culture represented in mainstream because.
Right.
Like you just feel seen, right? Like you're like that's like my childhood. Like that's what I grew up with.
Exactly. And you walking around with that and other people just seeing that and representing in a community. For example, if you're not in a heavily South Asian dominated community, you could still wear that. It's available. You don't have to get it from, let's say, where your parents are from. You don't have to go there and get it. You could just get it, like everybody else knows about it. And right now it's good because right now it's more convenient that way. There are a lot of brands out there who are embracing this side, and you'll see a lot. Recently I saw like a nonprofit with the Shazan mango juice, and I thought that was so cute because I love that, right?
Yeah.
So things like that kind of spark your interest even in the culture, right? Wearing it, especially if you're a teenager, during that time, that time of your life. It's very important to introduce such concepts to children and teens.
And like I'm sure you've experienced this growing up, and as like children of like immigrant parents where we just didn't really see, right? Like it was like you went to school and stuff, and you were either like made fun of your like bushy eyebrows or like thick hair and stuff. And then now it's become so mainstream that so many like non-brown people are just raving about it and trying to get like like different type of like cosmetic like enhancements to just look like us. And it's funny because it's like the opposite of like what we felt growing up.
Right.
So it seems like the representation for sure is like working somehow in this world.
Oh yeah. And being noticed in the mainstream media too recently, now more than ever. Kids are dressing up as Miss Marvel for Halloween, and it's not just for that purpose of Miss Marvel, but identifying, who she is, her identity, and listening to the songs that Miss Marvel has. So this was just something that came to my mind first off, that like it's so convenient now, as I said before, and it's, as you mentioned, like we did not grow up seeing that. especially
Yeah.
I come from a community with predominantly like Caucasian, everybody in my school, I was one of the handful, there were, but handful. And then you didn't feel like, demonstrating that when you go to school, you're kind of in the zone of, you're Hannah Montana, that's your second life,
Right.
that's your second life. And then you come back home and you instantly switch your languages and that's all you speak at home, right? So it's either or. I was always kind of like not whitewash, like I wouldn't call myself till this day like whitewash per se, but I don't like using that term because I feel like kids nowadays, you know, putting a label on anybody is not
Right.
appropriate. Especially if you're a child, you are trying to balance and it's hard, it's difficult. So maybe they didn't have enough access or enough,
Mhm.
you know, um, like the views weren't like around them, or they didn't have enough access to for example, TV shows or movies. Now they do, books, which is why the first place I thought about this. So books, any type of media, and it's so accessible nowadays. So I think this is the best time now more than ever to be demonstrated, to be represented in any media across the board. I don't think, like, for example, like we were just talking about the other day, like
Yeah.
Bridgerton, right? If we dress up for as Bridgerton, that's what, you're embracing it. It's not just that, light skinned, queen or princess or something. You're showcasing a whole other dimension. So I think times are definitely changing, and I'm so happy for that. It could have gone the other way around, right?
Yeah.
So day by day, we could have gotten extremely, immersed in the culture, we were brought into by our parents, right? But then it's shockingly, as you kind of said, it's pretty shocking. It's
Yeah.
very exciting too that this is happening. Like I don't think we would have guessed this like when we were,
Yeah.
early 2000s, definitely not, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And I really did like, so you touched upon like the concept of being a child, kind of growing up in this like Hannah Montana type of life, right? Like living
Yeah.
this double life.
Yeah.
And the kind of like the reasoning right behind that was because like if you brought like your mom's like kana right into like the lunchroom in school, nobody would understand what it was. They would call it stinky, and you just be like bullied for it. And
Right.
so it made you feel like you weren't part of the pack, right? You weren't part of like the group and everything, so you felt like an outsider. But then at
Right.
the same time, like when you went home, it's like, yeah, like your parents are saying that like, okay, let's like basically start and like talk about like all the implement the traditions and everything. But
Yeah.
as like a young child, you
It's too
don't want,
much at the
yes,
same
too
time.
much, because like you're like, I don't, I'm not in Pakistan, I'm not in like India, I'm not in like
Yeah.
I'm not in those countries. I'm
Right.
in America, and I also want to feel like I am at home here. And I
Yeah.
think that concept of feeling at home as a child is so important, which is why it like ties into the concept of representation. Because like when you see it, right,
Yeah.
as a child, you see it on screen.
Yeah.
You see it in like clothing, you see it in like different type of businesses and everything.
Exactly.
You
It's
feel like
funny.
that's me.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the Kana point because the other day I was at Whole Foods and they had they had a salad bar, but then they also had like a whole array of, chicken tikka masala. They had at Whole Foods. And like I was just like, wow, like,
Oh,
you
yeah, I
you
love
have
that.
your
Yeah.
standard, organic salad bar and all those things that are, that Whole Foods is known for. And then there they go, they have vegetables, they have like chicken, and they have naan, and they have everything like healthy, like healthy in their dimension. But it's shocking because you see such a business, such a brand that you wouldn't expect, especially to have or embrace a whole different Indian culture or South Asian culture. So just smell it. I was like, I do smell
Yeah.
tikka masala somewhere where and I look back and then they have like the whole buffet, and it's great. So I feel
Right.
like it's slowly but surely we're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like taking this to like back to like your book, right? The Sweets Down the Streets. It's a children's book. It's like debuted a couple months ago. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I love the concept. And I just want to like talk a little bit more about your book and like how, what made you want to write a children's book over all the other type of like print media?
Right. So, I'm sure you're gonna ask me a little bit about like my writing background. So I'll just say a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
about where I started from. So why a children's book? So first of all, I'll talk about I had a lot of work experience with children ever since I was little. With tutoring children with learning deficiencies. When it doesn't have to be like they weren't like ethnic, or
Mhm.
it wasn't like they were there were a lot of diverse children that I used to teach, but just it was like a part-time thing during high school, early college, where it was a lot of children with learning deficiencies, problems studying, and just after a really long day of classes, just going there and spending 3 hours with them every other day, it was just like I related to them so much, working with children. Then, obviously, I'm the only child, so I don't have like firsthand experiences with taking care of. I'm not like an older sibling, so I never had that, personal experience with children beyond, I have a boatload of cousins and baby cousins, and we spend a lot of time with them. But then my extracurriculars kind of always somehow involve children. So whether it's tutoring, whether it's working in an autism institute, working in research in autism, so everything was related to kids, right? So when the first thing that comes to your mind when you're thinking about something like this, or thinking of a brand, or thinking of an initiative you want to take, for example, I'm part of a nonprofit called DCI.
Mhm.
Who's that for? That's for children in Bangladesh and in parts of India as well. But again, it always leaned towards, somehow it already always fixtured upon like children. So when you first sit down and you want to know, like, okay, I want to build a brand, I want to write a book or anything, who do I relate more to? Who do I
Mhm.
spend the most time with? Like, especially through teaching them, right? That how their learning process goes, how they learn. Of course, as a student myself, or yourself,
Mhm.
you'll know how a teenager thinks or stuff, but that's like only limited POV.
Mhm.
That's from your point of view. So just thinking about that. So long story short, children's book, obviously it was on kind of my bucket list, kind of saying like, I do want to write a children's book once, because I was part of young authors in elementary school, where we each wrote a book and then they put it in a fancy cover and they put it in the library, and we went to like a whole statewide, I believe, a conference. So that was purely just like something fun, a club to join in elementary school. I didn't think anything of it. But at that time, I was like, I want to put one of my books when I grow up in a library shelf. But that was a thing, that was at time. If I look back now, yes, I did, say that to myself. But then years down the road, it wasn't ever like, okay, I have to do this. This year I'm gonna write a children's book. It never came at that. It was just the pandemic gave us a lot of time to think, just take a breath, take a deep breath,
Mhm.
sit and see, what life is short. Like, I'm sure you would agree. Like, the
Yeah.
pandemic taught us that, they're to embrace whatever, is around us, right? So that's where I was like, what can I do right now that I wouldn't have time otherwise to do? And I was like, do something for children. For like children's across the board, right? So that's how a book came about, because I always loved to write, and it was something that it just came to me, because I just thought, it's something cute. I could like leave an imprint, like a imprint in the
Mhm.
world. I feel like books always do that, regardless of everything comes and goes, but your writing kind of stays, whether it's online or especially you have books from the 80s, the 70s, the 60s,
Yeah.
people still adore it. So even if one household reads it, that's good enough for me. So yeah,
Yeah,
long
I
story
mean, I love the fact that you brought up the fact that, you have, in a way, a connection, so, with the books themselves, and just like the concept, like the children books and working with children, because I think it's important to, like, in the work that you produce, to have some type of like familiarity or connection,
short.
because like you have to be able to put yourself in some place of like the shoes of that
Right.
person. to
Right.
like really fulfill like the need that's like
Mhm.
there. So I just want to like also talk about the book itself, right? It's not just any children's book. It's the character is a South Asian character, and you actually incorporate different South Asian characters from different countries in the book itself.
Right.
What made you choose like diverse characters in your children's book?
That's a really good question. So, um, initially, when I started, drafting it and everything, I was like, I'm going to try because I do designs for my mishti. So
Mhm,
let me try to see if I could draw. The concept was where what the drawing would be purely like very scratchy, very something like a 4-year-old would draw. So it's not supposed to be like really nice
mhm,
illustrations, right? And then I was like, you know what? I want to partner up with somebody. And the first person that came to mind was a friend of mine who I met online specifically. Her name is Gurbani. She's the illustrator for my book, and so she was just a friend. We bonded, and she did a lot of work in social media, and she illustrated for fun, so it's nothing she did mainstream. And she is actually my one and only like Punjabi Indian friend, like Indian Punjabi friend,
mhm,
right? So yeah, I'm always around. I have a lot of Pakistani friends. And obviously people from all over South Asia. But with her, having a like a Punjabi Indian illustrator,
mhm,
I just thought, when I was writing it, I was like, each of the characters, as the flip of the book, I want to see a Punjabi kid in there. I'm not just going to do it from my point of view. As I said
mhm,
before, it's just your point of view, right? So if she's an illustrator, it only makes sense to have a character from her culture. So we put Jesse in there. Right. And then as you went on, I was like, I want this to be a diverse community. This could be any, it could be in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. We could
mhm,
have, there are communities here, I'm sure you could agree, in New Jersey as well, where there's one community neighborhood where, at least 70% of them are like South Asian. It
right,
just happens to be because everybody just moves in. So this book, I didn't like specify what setting it was, right? It could be in India too, because in India, there's a lot of diversification where
mhm,
it's South Asian, but you have Muslims, you have Christians, you have Hindus, in like one kind of local neighborhood, right? So that's where I was thinking. I was like, with every fifth of the book, I want not only not only Basit, who could be Bengali or Pakistani, but also every single step of the way, I want every single person who pick children or adult, like, to pick up the book and see that, oh, here I could get the book. So I'm from India, or I speak Gujarati, and my kid could, read this and, be familiar with other kids of their, South Asian descent, right? So it's not just them. How many kids think that, okay, since I'm Bengali or I'm Pakistani, I'm Indian, I'm Sri Lankan, the there are other people who exist who are kind of similar to us, who eat or have similar vocab as us, right? So very early on, I just wanted to give them a kind of inclination that there are other, people who, who have pani. Pani is water in almost all of the South Asian
mhm,
community, regardless of what religion or what culture you're from, right? So kind of having that idea where there's Isha, it could be anybody,
right.
and that was kind of the goal. But it all started with my illustrator being not of the same culture as I am, where we wanted to represent the both of us, and then one thing led to the other.
Thanks. I was gonna say when you were about to say like she's like your only Punjabi friend, I'm like, Punjabi here.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's what I was saying. Like Punjab, from like solely like like
Yeah,
there's Punjabi in Pakistan, there's
exactly.
India,
Yeah.
right? India, right? So again, this is a clear like example of what I wanted to kind of demonstrate. There's other people. You're not solely limited to
Exactly.
where your parents are from or where your community resides in.
Yeah.
So yay, I didn't know that about you. So that's great.
So I wanted to also like ask like our backstage person to like pull up so there's an overlay of like the book itself so that we can just take a look at like the book that we're talking about, the cover. So if like Sabina's backstage, like if she can just like go to the overlay section and pull up the picture. Let's see. See, there you go. All right. So this is the book here. It's called Sweets Down the Street, and that's the beautiful picture of Shezda on the left. So just so that for those who are watching, they know which book we're talking about. Like the illustration, like it's so cute. And like he's holding his little, right, that's a mitai box.
Yeah. So that was the reason. Like, of course, Gurbani, she illustrates beautifully. You know, she does like fashion sketches. She does a lot of things that are very intricate, right? And for this one, I was like, no, I want something that, you know, it looks doodleish. It looks like somebody just doodled on. It has to be something that, you know, it's of course illustration, like if the illustrator is good, she could have probably done everything like over the top, right? For her, I was like, you know, this might be hard for you, but I need you to tone it down a notch. And
Oh,
like yeah, like
yeah.
you know, just
Right.
be doodly. And like when a kid opens it up, and I've done like read alouds in the area and beyond so far, especially in schools and public libraries. And you know, I was like, you know, I asked them because I wanted to know from their point of view, the kids who are in like K through first grade. I was like, does this look like something you could draw? And they're like, yeah, I could draw something like that. And then, you know, the mitai is supposed to be, it's look like, not like have super intricate designs, something that children could like open and be, you know, familiar with, and something they could mimic and probably draw. Because I do have a few sheets in the back of the book, like towards the end, where it's like draw your favorite, so they have a place to draw to. So the whole concept was very personable, something they could just open up, and something they could just relate to right off the bat.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So we talked about like the diverse characters in the book, the illustration, kind of like why you got into like writing a children's book. But like, does the story itself, and like, you know, maybe you could give like some of our viewers like a little summary of the story.
Yeah.
But like, does the story itself like relate to you, and you know,
Big
just give a little bit of that. Yeah.
Big time. I was just talking to one of my cousins about it, and we were laughing because it's so true. Just yesterday, we had a Halloween party at my nanny's. So the thing is, I kind of grew up in my nanny's in the first couple of years, and then, you know, we all kind of did. We were, you know, my nanny and nana, they were, you know, the first ones to come here, and you know, my dada's side's, you know, not in America. So we always, you know, my mom has 7 brothers and sisters, so it was always Nani's house. Anything happens, it's Nani's house, right? So right off the bat, I knew if somebody's cooking or somebody's making mitai or mishti in Bangla, as we call it, it has to be Nani. So that's how, you know, initially, I'll give a little reiteration and a little summary of the book. So Basit, he, you know, it's in the weekends, it's in the morning. He tells his dad that I want to go, and then they go to Nani's house, right? And then Nani makes up a storm as usual, and cooks up a storm, and then you know, she makes his favorite mitai. So he has a handful of mitai, and then it's time to go back home, and he could just walk back home. And then on the way, he meets all his friends who have you know, who are in situations. So some situations are happy, some situations are sad. And that's the other concept, where whether it's like you know, sweets have always been part of our culture, mainly with associated with happiness and happy, you know, happy events. But then also in the culture we grew up in, you know, especially nowadays, you know, we could just get a bucket of ice cream when we're feeling down, right? We turn on Netflix, and what do? We, you know, we love junk food, we like brownies, we like sweets. So in a different type of culture, you know, that's what I kind of first of all I thought about. Because you know, when a baby's born or when somebody's getting married, you have the box of mitai, but not in in the culture we grew up in. You know, we could have sweets no matter if we're happy or sad, of course, for happy occasions too, but also when we're feeling when we're at our lowest. So some characters do, you know, demonstrate that when they're sad, right? So that's kind of telling the kids that you could share. First of all, sharing is caring, the
Mhm.
ultimate rule. But also you could share sweets and mithai in this instance, in happy times, and like in a high low, like kind of a roller coaster. So that was kind of the whole plot, the main meat of the story. And then at the end, I kind of relate to the end as well, because in my household, primarily, my dad is an ultimate chef, right? So kind of define the gender roles
Right.
in a lot of South Asian communities where, I grew up watching my dad. My mom loves to cook too, and obviously I love her cooking. But just seeing the male figure in my house cook almost every day, no buts, no ifs, and he loves to do it till this day. Just before he left this morning, he's like, I love his avocado toast. So he got like really frustrated. He's like, "You want me to make it for you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. You could just leave it on the table." So stuff like that. I grew up watching that happen, and still to this day, where I'm living with them right now, and I do expect that in my future as well, where we're having equal roles, not just to say we're equal, not to say, oh, I'm working and he's
Right.
working, or the child, the father of my child,
Mhm.
but actually follow it, right? So whereas it's a children's book, what more can a child learn? But these little things always stick in the back of that. I can remember so many children's book, so many children's movies that you just remember one scene, right?
Mhm.
It's stuck. It's so, even if it's not something that's super famous, right? It's not your Harry Potter. It's not, your, hey, hey Arnold, or something that
Yeah.
you watch every day. But if it's just a simple, like, if my book could teach just any other child, that, oh, the dad cooked at the end of the, made him something at the end. So little things like that I tried to incorporate, not to bombard the reader a
Mhm.
lot, with a lot of information, very basic, very minute details here and there, but it's something that, it's changing the scene or the platform a little bit. So that's how I kind of related to the whole kind of platform. Sorry, the whole kind of plot, where, I started with Nani. One thing I did kind of not make up, but that kind of didn't relate, was the fact that, this neighborhood was filled with South Asian characters, which
Mhm.
I did not grow up in a neighborhood like that. I was fortunate to have a lot of friends, Indian friends, but then that was for like a year or two. Then they moved on. They moved ahead. So I never had a stable community with South Asians, and I kind of always, was inclined to having a community like that, which I'm so fortunate to be a part of right now. But when I was growing up, I didn't. So I wanted children to open up the book to kind of relate to it. So I feel like if you were asking me who my audience is, of
Yeah.
course, it's of children who are not of South Asian descent, of course, so they could open the book up and kind of have a believable narrative. Uh,
Mhm.
where, I asked so many kids, most of my read alouds, especially in the public library, they didn't have any South Asian kids. But then there was a great turnout, and they're raising their hand. I have a friend who looks like him.
Oh.
And then, it looks like Jussie, or it looks
Mhm.
like, has a scarf on. So, yes, of course, the book is meant for them, right? But the book is also for individuals who, my younger cousins, probably your younger cousins, or individuals who, want representation, or,
Mhm.
as we were talking, it was like the best of both worlds, kind of mixing the both of them. So, yeah, definitely a relatable story.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, when as I was like as I was just like going through it myself,
Yeah,
to just like, see like where like how the characters play a role and everything. I love the fact that, like, one, you mentioned that the concept of like eating the sweets, right? In like Desi culture, sweets are usually a sign of like it's supposed to be used in like celebrations and happy moments. But like
exactly.
in Western cultures, like when we're down and stuff, like we'll like get a tub of ice cream or like eat all the chocolates that we want in the world.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
so like that kind of like mixing of the two cultures and putting it in the book itself was a really like smart concept, because it made it a lot more, like for a wider audience.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I doubt if anybody is, obviously it's a human nature to give somebody a treat when they're down, right?
Mhm.
Regardless of, what culture you come from, or, what thing you practice at home. But in general, if somebody, I don't know. Obviously, as I mentioned, somebody who, gets married, or you have a box of mitais,
Mhm.
babies, you have a box of mitai, but rarely, oh, getting a job, getting a promotion, somebody
Yeah.
brings in like mitai, right? But rarely in any case would you bring in a mitai if if you got fired. Like, no, like that does not happen, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
that
changing
would be almost an insult.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? So kind of seeing like how the cultures kind of differ in that
Mhm.
instance, but as the concept was primarily to introduce sharing to kids.
Right.
Again, one of the read alouds I asked, I asked a couple questions at the end, right? So I was going around the room and I asked, like, what would you share when your friend is sad, or what would you do when your friend's sad, or what would you do when your friend's happy? And they
Mhm.
almost had the same answer, where they're like, I would share my lunch, or I would give them a card or something when they're down. So it's always like children have the firsthand instinct of sharing or doing something for another individual
Yeah.
in happy occasions and sad. And I think that's a part of American culture, and I'm thankful for that, for being born into a community where we practice that, and I think that's really important.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you brought up, right, incorporating the gender roles and like normalizing what's a more healthier balance. Especially living in, a life here where you do need like double contribution. Like you can't, it's really hard to sustain a life where one is like, specifically doing one thing and only doing that one thing. And, like the other person is doing specifically something else, and they're
Yeah.
not like sharing the responsibilities because like
Yeah.
life happens, right? And it was interesting because like I remember someone bringing up the fact that, as a young mom, she's trying to teach her son to like make his bed,
Yeah.
and every morning that he wakes up, and she has like a son and a daughter, and she teaches both of them to do the same thing. And
Yeah.
then the son one day was like, why do I have to do it if dad's not doing it? And
Exactly.
that was like a very like, that was a thought-provoking moment,
Great.
because it was like,
Yeah.
who, at the end of the day, like a father is a role model, and playing the role model for that, the son in that situation, like for that son. And so
Mhm.
like the son's like, well, you're telling me to do this, but then like dad's not
Yeah.
doing it, so I don't
Yeah.
know why I need to do it. Clearly it's not something I need to do.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and so like when the fact that you incorporated, right, like the dad, and like he's helping, and like he's making them a tie and stuff, like cooking,
Yeah.
that gave representation for like young boys, that like this is okay. It's not, it's there, and there's nothing wrong with it at all, because it's a life skill, right?
Yeah, it's a exactly,
It's a
now
life skill.
yeah.
Like I hope you know
But
how to
yeah,
treat
also
your
yeah,
son.
also, it obviously it is a life skill, as you mentioned, but also in the concept of the story,
Yeah.
where dad's trying to make his day, where, of course, a mom is the first one,
Hmm.
regardless, I feel like in any culture,
Yeah.
is the first one who would, dive into,
Right.
making their child's day better. But, obviously, dads do the same. It's just
Exactly.
dads would probably buy something, or, to do something,
Hmm.
not like, not go into the kitchen and like whip up something, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not something you kind of think about, in mostly, I'm not speaking for every single
Yeah.
household here, but like in the majority of households. So of course, it's something that I wanted to introduce very early on,
Hmm.
where I did not actually, funny story, I did not actually have the dad, doing this at the end.
Yeah.
We actually drew it and we put everything on as the mom doing it.
Hmm.
Didn't come to me at all. Then, it was lunchtime, and again, as I mentioned, like, my dad loves, like, cooking, so he just, like, cooked up his own little recipe, and then I was, like, eating, and then I was working on this, right? I was working on the last couple of pages, and I was, like, looking at my food, and then I was, like, looking at my story, and I was like, "Whoa, whoa, wait," and then I texted my illustrator, I was like, "I'm gonna change this up a little bit," and she's like, "Yeah, go for it," and then I was like, I just like the last Tuesday, I just switched it. I was like, it's a easy switch. I know it's a few more hours, like 4 or 5 hours more work, but
Hmm.
if it's something that, triggered me. Like it's something that came to like triggered me where saying like, no, this is wrong. Like I can't be the one writing this where I cannot be introducing something that, oh, the nanny cooked it pages down, like, as
Yeah.
wrote, the mom cooked it. Like, it can't be like
Right.
too, it can't be too lateral in that sense.
Hmm.
Whereas I don't practice that in my house, so I don't want to demonstrate that. So, it was very naive when I first initially wrote it. Like, I didn't think anything of it, right? But then when you actually think of it and in a very critical, like through a very kind of critical lens, I'm
Hmm.
sure no 4-year-old or 7-year-old would even think about it. But isn't it nice to have that kind of aspect where, if a teacher, I had a friend who is a elementary school teacher who read this book out loud to her kid, her kids in her class, and she pointed it out as well,
Yeah.
where she was like, do you realize the gender role, changing a little bit, and just so teachers or any educators, or
Hmm.
even if it's a bedtime story at home, the mom can point it out,
Yeah.
right? So little things here and there to make the book very valuable for sure.
Yeah, and then showing that like a father's love can be represented in different ways, not just like the ways that we're used to seeing growing up. So while I'm like, there's a couple more questions I do want to ask, but like I also want to be a little bit cognizant of the time.
Yeah.
But like while I go through the questions, Sabina, if there's like any comments, okay, there you go. All right, so Sarah is asking, what advice would you give to the younger generation who wants to creatively write but are afraid of the stigmas that come in the Desi community and writing not being a stable career?
Oh, definitely. So, I had a question exactly like, "Oh, are you a writer? So you also want to be a doctor? Like, where's the
Right.
correlation? How did you do it?" And as I mentioned before, yes, the pandemic did give me time to do this, whereas I probably would have probably done it. It's just not in the next couple of years for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the advice that I would give to who want to creatively like write, start off as it being a side thing for sure. If we're saying realistically,
Mhm.
I know it's gonna take a lot of time out of your weekends, or you're playing sports. I know children dedicate so much time to extracurriculars now more than ever, I believe, from
Yeah.
an aspect where if you could go to in the morning, you could go to karate classes, right? They could also dedicate some time, 3 or 4 hours to to pursue your creative side, whether it's writing, whether it's art. It could be anything. In the South Asian community, writing is not a stable career. Being in the arts is not a stable career, where we have people killing it, especially through Brown Girl Magazine. I get to see communities of artists and creatives, and it's really amazing to see them, right? And they transitioned. Now it's the full-time thing. So introducing the younger generation, and such as platforms such as yours, platforms such as Brown Girl Mag. There's so many other South Asian amazing platforms out there where they introduce or they showcase individuals who kind of made a career change.
Mhm.
So for sure, exposing the younger generation to platforms like that, making them follow the pages, scrolling through. Oh,
Yeah.
this person switched from being, what was it? In Never Have I Ever, I forgot his name. But he was a med student, I believe.
Right.
Oh, no, he was applying to med school or something, right? And then now he's a full-time actor. So he talks about his transition. We did an interview with him on our platform too. So I was kind of reading over that, and I was like, of course, if your passion doesn't lie there too, to tell the children that to seek your passion. Obviously, working with children, being a physician would be my top more
Mhm.
priority, of course. But nowadays, it's so much easier to have side hustles,
Yeah.
right? As you are doing it, right?
Yeah.
You're not doing this as a full-time thing. You do have a full-time
Mhm.
stable career, or not even stable. It's something you enjoy. I'm sure you enjoy what you do, right?
Oh
It gives
yeah, I do.
exactly right. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
saying that's also an important thing
Mhm.
that a lot of people dread, their 9 to 5s, or,
Yeah.
a lot of kids are saying, if you don't become a doctor or engineer or anything of that sort, you're not going to be successful. Successful is very different in today's
Yeah.
day and age, right? Your parents have to also be kind of open-minded, but I'm saying that, don't be afraid of the stigma, but at the same time, do acknowledge something that you could do daily
Yeah.
that will make you, I mean, it's your dreams too, right? You have to travel. You want to travel. You want to, have a good lifestyle. I'm not
Hmm.
saying extravagant, but a good lifestyle that you can fall back on. And unfortunately, sometimes writing, art does not give you that right off the bat, I'm saying, right? But definitely seek creativity, dedicate your time after hours, over the weekends,
Yeah.
create a platform, create a website, work on it, right? You would have to work on it over time. It's going to be a double thing. It's going to be, but if you want to pursue it years down the line, when it takes off and it's up and running, you could say bye to your, regular
Yeah.
9 to 5, and it won't be a big deal. And to yourself, it won't be a big deal. So I feel like one advice for younger generation is to, kind of balance it.
Yeah.
Hard, but there's so many individuals like yourself, like you could reach out to me or anybody in a magazine platform
Yeah.
such as Brown Girl Magazine. We're very welcoming to anybody who wants to write, or who don't have time to write. We're like, we're only requiring a couple of hours per week. Can you do that for us?
Hmm.
Yes. Then let's go ahead. It doesn't matter what you do in your 9 to 5, right? So be open to such platforms. So that's the advice I would definitely give to young writers and any creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I 100% like, advocate that, and it like resonates with me. And like you said, right, you on your, from a personal end and on your platform,
Yeah.
you want to give opportunities to people who are exploring kind of the arts or writing, but also making sure that like, they have that like strong, like stability there so
Mhm.
that they can, that's something that they can fall back on. And then one of the other things I did want to do like a little shout out is like the program itself that this like online conversation is in correspondence with is the Elevate Youth Voices program.
Yeah.
And the program itself, it's basically does exactly this, and like is a nonprofit, part of Women to Women Forum. And the point of like Elevate Youth Voices is to give a platform for young South Asians
Exactly.
in various different areas, in career development and arts and STEM, and also connect them to their community. So like we
Exactly.
do philanthropic type of events, and like Shezda, you were at the the Eid like gifts wrapping that we
Yeah,
did
yeah, that was
to
great.
like give to the children, give to underprivileged children. And the point of like having these philanthropic events is definitely to connect young South Asians to like the resources in their community and be connected with like what is going, staying grounded and like what is happening around them,
Exactly.
and taking their voice not as just like, we all can get onto social media and like share a post about something that's happening or talk about it, but really being on the ground is so important, like cultivating like your
Exactly.
knowledge of like what really is going on, connecting with people like Shazza or me or other people in our like specific careers to basically help build mentorship.
Exactly.
So so I'm like, my throat is getting
No,
dry
no,
from
no,
like going on
no,
these
you're
rants.
fine. Yeah, and then doing so with people
Yeah.
who are almost around the same, like on the same boat as you, people who look like you. Like,
Right.
of course, volunteering, for example, out of the country and everything is great, and you're putting so much time and effort into any of your endeavors and nonprofit endeavors, but then also just going so locally and people who are like you or from similar communities like you, and going forward to helping children
Yeah.
in those specific communities where your parents are from, which is why I initially started helping out with DCI, where I was doing a lot of work for India through another organization where my parents went, oh, this is great, but have you ever thought about doing things for India, including helping Bangladesh, and there wasn't anything like that available or through a simple Google search at that moment when I was in high school. So then through Mishti's,
Mhm.
that's also what I do, where I make the T-shirts or whatever the profits. The majority of the profits go to certain organizations, whatever urgency or like time that time is urgent,
Yeah.
whereas it's Lebanon, whether it's India, whether it's Pakistan, which is like the floods in Pakistan. So anything that may be, that's the whole goal. Yeah.
Yeah. And if there are like anybody who is trying to explore kind of their, give a platform for their talents and stuff, we are doing an open mic in New Brunswick in Jinsoy. Shezda would love for you to come to that
Love
and kind of just
to.
like connect with the talent that's there.
Yeah.
It's you could do people can do a monologue, singing, acting. I know someone's going to be doing like a kind of a magic type of trick and stuff. So it's going to be a great
So
space
cool.
for like South
Yeah.
Asian creatives, young South Asian creatives. So like platforms like events like that can really help in like cultivating that talent while
Exactly.
you're doing, while you're
Yeah, we didn't have
having the
that. Like,
financial stability.
the platforms that are available right now, we didn't really have that. I think the only thing we really had was like South Asian Club in high school. And
No, we did not. I know,
yeah,
yeah.
so we didn't really have much, but then like the access that children and kids and young adults have nowadays, it's great. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we had like a question with questions.
Yeah, we did have a question. So I guess like really quickly, like where
Yeah.
can we find your book?
Amazon, yes. So I didn't have like a book launch yet. I was planning on, having like a book signing event and where everybody I've yet to do it, but that's in on my calendar. But yeah, we could find you guys could find Sweets Down the Street on Amazon. The link is on the Instagram's bio, and then there is also a Facebook page, but I share a lot more on Instagram. So if you just type in Sweets Down the Street on Amazon, you should find it.
And then Sarah said, do you plan on writing more stories that maybe address more taboo topics like divorce, relationship abuse that are prevalent but a blind eye is turned against?
Oh, that's a good definitely writing. I don't know in the whether it would be in a form of a book, but through the articles that I write monthly, we do touch upon certain topics. Not me personally, because I write more lifestyle pieces because that's what I enjoy. But if it comes up, I recently did a review of a Netflix show where in the South Asian community they do discuss abuse, domestic abuse.
Oh,
And
is it the movie
yeah,
with
Darling, right?
yeah, Darling. Oh,
So
yeah.
things like that where I do enjoy writing about entertainment and lifestyle, but then also if the topic pertains to divorce, relationship abuse that's mentioned here, definitely a blind eye is definitely turned against such topics till this day. So that's a change that we need to promote. Hopefully, who knows? Like, I do want to write more books. I know like Bassett's adventure should continue on, hopefully, when life is back on track again after the pandemic. So I do hope that I could find some time later on to have another version. But yes, writing definitely not in a book form but in article form as well, to shed light onto those topics.
Okay. And I'm just gonna ask Sabina if there's like any other comments or questions before we wrap this up. And will there be a meet and greet?
You can meet and greet me. Yeah, I don't know as of yet. If something comes up and we could plan something with another organization, I'm all for it. Planning takes a lot, but I'd be happy to. I love stopping by pop-ups, whether it's through a organization. I love going to things like the gift wrapping, and I'm always if time allows, I like to stop by, and especially if I can get myself there because I live in Pennsylvania and Philly.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very hard to go to these amazing events that go on. So yeah, definitely I would love to share my story. There's a lot of library hop-ins I'm planning, hopefully in Jersey, so I'll definitely let you know if that works out. So yeah, meet and greet in that sense for sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely keep us in the loop, and like if there's any way like that we could maybe do something. And I know we've been talking about like doing something at the local library, having kind of like it is like a meet and greet where you can read aloud the book and meet like the little kids and the parents. So let's like continue to like figure that out.
Yeah, I definitely want
I'd love
to make
to do
that happen. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So, oh, and I did want to like, because I don't know if you had mentioned that, you do write for Brown Girl magazine and that they could find like some of your articles on there, and like on your Instagram too, there's like so much information that like people can find. So I guess like, do you plan like, I mean, Brown Girl magazine itself actually addresses a lot of taboo topics, right?
A lot. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
primarily that's what we aim to do. Uh, you know, it just happens to be so where, we're a lifestyle brand, right? So we
Mhm.
cover everything that encompasses, a quote unquote a typical South Asian individual's life, right? So
Yeah.
of course we have to touch upon these taboo topics, and not only Brown Girl magazine, not only women, but it's not gender specific.
Right.
We hope to touch upon such topics, and we do use. So I do. If you want to reach out, reach out with your own story. Our platform's always open. You could just email us at hello@browngirlmagazine.com, and most of the times those emails come to our staff, me as well. So if you want to share your own story, we're welcoming anybody's story. And if you want to, be a voice in our community, we also welcome that.
Are you working on any future publications?
Non-academic, not at this moment. But yeah, there's a lot of academic publications, which I'm sure you guys won't be super interested in reading at this moment. But yeah, there's a lot of sciencey stuff that I've been working on, like research wise. But hopefully I don't like to let go of things that easily, where it's not, I don't like fad things. For
Mhm.
example, like I just talk about that on my page a lot. Like I don't enforce fad diets and everything. I don't like to start something and end it. For example, for Mishtis, it's really hard for me to balance stuff post pandemic, right? But there's a lot of pandemic businesses that just happened during the pandemic, and now they don't, function anymore because life happened, right? But for me, it's something that if I created it, if I gave in time, and it's something that still seems to be prevalent, and it's something that seems to work even now, or even 2 years from now, I like to hold on to something. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't like to let go that easily. I just don't like to, have a chopped up, for example, like on a resume. I don't like to do like I did this.
Mhm.
I like to, continue things where, I'm working or I'm doing this for 5 or 6 years or more. So I like to do that with organizations alike. So that's why I like to, I want to write. I want to keep on publishing, and second best, it is definitely in the future. I just don't know when. I definitely want to work on, promoting Sweets Down the Street first, because it takes a long time, and it's not just a year or two. I like to familiarize Bassett first,
Yeah.
the next couple of months and next year or so, and then we'll see.
So there are like so many questions that I feel like I could go on and on asking,
Yeah,
because this is such an important topic, and like this
yeah,
has to be talked about more for sure.
yeah,
And like, I did want to like ask this question, but we are running like short on time.
yeah,
So we could always have like a follow-up discussion, or just like you can answer these actually questions below the kind of like this
sure,
video itself. So
right.
like if anybody's interested, just like any last comments that you want to give
Yeah.
about the book, or anything that you want to share.
I know you shared a couple questions with me before, and I just wanted to talk about a little
Yeah.
question that I really thought it was very
Yeah.
important, where you talked about, why do you introduce different languages in your book, and I think that was very important and
Oh,
light
that's
on.
my question, because you use the word like nani and like
Yeah, like
Nikkei and
yeah,
stuff.
stuff like,
Yeah.
where using cultural words. What's the reason behind that? I wanted it to be a believable narrative with basic words, where a child who doesn't speak a certain language at home, but they know nani, they know ma, they know baba, they know ammi, they know pani, they know biryani, simple things that anybody would know. I put up a couple images and a couple words, and then I told kids who are not South Asian to match it up and see,
Oh,
which one what
yeah.
means what. They knew instantly that nani means grandma. similar, because they
Mhm.
come from like an Italian background, Nona, they make such, and if a first grader can make connections like that, their brain is
Yeah.
stimulated, right? So to stimulate, to use simple words in everyday language, right? To say that, oh, Bonnie, I want some Bonnie. I've read some, as a parent wrote to me, as like a review where, my kid has been actually learning these words right now. And it's great because it's not a vocabulary book per se. It's not a book where you just open up and there's vocab and you get to learn, but it's written and it's seamed into as a story. And there's a
Mhm.
vocab list on the back. So if you don't know, you could always go to the back and kind of know. So I feel like the reasoning behind it was so people are familiar. And they're not embarrassed to say,
Yeah.
that, oh, I'm eating rice. They could just say, I'm eating biryani, and it's nothing shameful. If you could see it in a book in your local library, your school library, it's
Yeah.
okay to say. So a lot of kids, growing up, I said like, oh, I'm eating bread, and they were for some reason hesitant to say roti,
Yeah.
like, so it's stuff like that, like if familiarizing themselves, having a believable, a narrative, believable characters.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I actually was like looking forward to like this question because it reminds me of the fact that like we look at Miss Marvel and like we look at other type of entertainment now that's become more mainstream. They
Yeah,
use cultural words, right? They
exactly.
use words that you've mentioned and like
Yeah,
words that are very familiar to like young like children because
yeah,
those are words that are often spoken in their house.
exactly.
And then you don't just feel like you said, you don't feel weird
Yeah,
mentioning those words, and
yeah,
you feel seen, you feel heard, and I think that's the most important thing when it comes
most
to
important thing, for
representation.
sure.
Yeah.
I
So
was even rhyming them too.
oh yeah, right. Oh,
Yeah,
like I mean like at home like I don't know why like it's always like some word will have to have like a rhyme next to like the other
yeah,
word.
exactly. So
Yeah.
introducing that, because like I try to like rhyme mostly,
Yeah.
so that's why I said like, it's so fun to do, so why not?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, all right. So will you be hosting? Oh, this is actually a pretty neat idea.
would love to. Yes,
Would
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah,
And this is exactly like what our program wants to do, right? Work
exactly.
with like collaborators like you, and like give an opportunity to like other young South Asians in our community, where they can have that like one-on-one, like face-to-face connection with
Exactly.
someone who's already on the path of doing that. Because like you said, like us growing up, we
We
didn't have any, but like who like
we
I,
just
I
needed
had
like
no
one
mentor.
platform to give us a little push. And if we
Yeah.
can do that for other individuals, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because if those platforms didn't give me an opportunity, I would not even think about writing a children's book, publishing a children's book,
Yeah.
that too, with a South Asian character or with the whole South Asian theme to it. So I never, if I feel like you need that little push, and if we're able to provide it to anybody who would seek it, that's a good job. That's a good job done. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for joining in on this conversation and talking about an important topic, which was about South Asian representation in children's media. I am also going to just do a shout out for our upcoming event. It is an open mic in New Brunswick at Jinsoy, and it's going to be a platform for young South Asian creatives between the ages of 18 and 35 for them to come up and show us their talent. Open mics are a great way to like get rid of
Yeah.
those jitters,
Oh,
and
definitely.
like it can really help in just like kind of working your way through like these like type of like small little like events and stuff, and like working your way through building connections and meeting people. And we are inviting people who are already in the industry themselves, so like it'll be a great opportunity to kind of take that time to like connect and like build that network. So that is on November 10th. It's from 7 to 10 p.m. in New Brunswick, Jinsoy. I will post the details in at the like the comment section in this video, and then like if you follow, even like if you're following me or Elevate Youth Voices, we'll be posting it like crazy.
Awesome.
So
That sounds fun. That's
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of fun. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
So thank you so much for joining us, Shezda. It was a great
So much for
conversation.
having me.